Herbie, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Sorry about that. Yeah, that was quite an evening.
When Ole Miss is up at halftime, now I did think the touchdown at the end of the first half was huge for Florida State, but what did you think going into halftime of that game?
Well, I think we talked about it on the air, just because of the history of Florida State. They have a tendency to get in at halftime and come out and look like a completely different team. If you remember the 14 team, that was kind of their MO. And you didn't know with a redshirt freshman if they could be that kind of team until you saw it. But I just really know that Jimbo Fisher probably adjusts as well as anybody, he and Nick Saban, in that second half. And what shocked me was how much better the line played, how much better the defense played. I mean, it was a collective effort. It was like watching two different teams.
Best win of the weekend was who?
I'll go off the board. I mean, Houston is I think, what everybody would say because of the magnitude of the win, beating a top 5 opponent. But I was really impressed with Wisconsin. Most people are talking about what's wrong with LSU. Should Les Miles be fired? I walked away from watching every play of that game thinking, Wisconsin looks really athletic on defense and really motivated. I thought Paul Chryst did a great job getting his team ready. Considering what you kind of were waiting for, what you thought you knew about Wisconsin, we kind of knew Houston was good. I didn't have any idea that Wisconsin was capable of doing that. So that was probably the one that really jumped out at me. But Oklahoma game against Houston and Texas, Notre Dame, those are obviously other ones as well.
Worst loss was who?
Well, it had to be Oklahoma. I know that if you're in the SEC, you would say LSU. But Oklahoma, all we heard about is their preseason top 5 ranking, and it seems like every time they're top 5 ranking, they just have a terrible year. And they went out and knew that Houston was a great football team, and just got out hustled and outplayed, and it was really a tough loss for them. And remember, they do have Ohio State in 2 weeks, kind of a mulligan to try to kind of salvage their season. But that was a tough loss for OU.
Is it a new trend where these coaches, athletic directors, are going to schedule tougher opponents? We saw this with quite a few teams, but is this an anomaly or is this, the future?
Great question. And we're going to have to wait to see how the committee of 12 react to this opening weekend at the end of the year. I've made a point that a team like Baylor, for example, who's kind of thumbing their nose before all their off-the-field issues, they were a top 5 kind of team. And they would play Northwestern State and Sam Houston State and SMU in their non-conference, and they would say, our rivals would publicly say, if we beat Oklahoma, we beat TCU, we beat Texas, and the rest of our conference, we dare you to keep us out of the top 4 if we win the Big 12 and we're undefeated. And that's what they would just go out and play a bunch of cupcakes. Meanwhile, other teams are challenging themselves in the non-conference, and Baylor would be ahead of them in the rankings in November and until they would lose a game. And so Notre Dame, for example, if Notre Dame plays a game like they're willing to play Texas in that kind of setting, and they get to the end of the year, and if they're 11-1, and their one loss is that overtime loss in Austin, and there's an undefeated team that didn't play anybody in their non-conference, me personally, I would have a one-loss Notre Dame ahead of an undefeated team that didn't play a ranked team in the non-conference, for me. How the committee reacts will dictate how head coaches and athletic directors move into the future and schedule the type of games that they schedule. Because right now, this weekend is definitely a reaction to the committee saying publicly that they're going to pay attention to non-conference scheduling. Now let's see if they back that up with how they rank teams at the end of the year.
Kirk Herbstreit from the Mothership joining us, Dan Patrick Show. Is it a foregone conclusion when this contract is up that we're going to go from 4 teams to 8 teams, or would it be even more than 8 teams in a playoff?
I think if we move, it's going to be 2-8, and I think it's probably inevitable because, as you know, money drives this whole thing, and at some point somebody's going to say, it'd be really nice if we really opened it up to more teams and gave more teams a chance. I like 4. I think it still gives us that urgency this opening weekend. I mean, this is an explosion to the season for college football. Now we have NFL coming in this week, but what a way for college football to just dominate the weekend from Thursday to Monday. And it was because we had unprecedented matchups.
Yeah.
And I think with having four, if you're an Oklahoma fan or an LSU fan, you're not, or a Notre Dame fan, you're not out of it at this point. But, man, you're on the outside looking in. And I think college football enjoys the regular season and the urgency and it mattering every week. You literally are sitting on the edge of your seat for the whole season. And I'm a diehard NFL fan, too. And you start to feel that way. You get to, week 12 or 13. But with college football, you feel that every week. And if you go to 8, I still think you probably would feel it. I don't think you're ever going to get to 16 or anything like that.
I think if you were rewarded with a tougher schedule, I'd be fine with going to 8. If I was insured of having great regular season matchups instead of these, cupcakes like Baylor
Right.
had, then I would not be for that. But if I'm going to reward you by playing a tough schedule and you might have 2 losses and you somehow get in that 18 playoff, I'd be fine with that. I do like the urgency of 4. I'm right there with you on that. We're talking.
One thing, Dan, is that that's a great point. I just want to add to that when I watch the committee, my concern is there's still that old AP voting or the old coaches poll voting that if you're undefeated, it's almost like Lee Corso. He sits next to me, and he'll debate, what teams with us, week 10 or 11. Well, Iowa's undefeated, so they got to be ranked ahead of that team with 1 loss. And I said, huh? Why? They haven't beaten a ranked team. Well, why would you say they have to? And his answer is they're undefeated. So it's almost this old school mentality of if you're undefeated, you have to be ahead of a team with 1 or 2 losses. It makes no sense. As we saw Stanford played Iowa in the Rose Bowl with 2 losses, and because Iowa was they had that 1 loss to Michigan State. Were they better than Stanford because they only had that 1 loss? Obviously, no.
USC's loss. We keep waiting for them to come back because it's good for college football when USC is in the mix. But are they further away than we think, or was that just Alabama's that good and caught them at the right time and humbled them?
I forgot that when you said maybe the worst loss of the weekend because I expected that first quarter was competitive.
Yeah,
I thought we'd have a competitive game. I thought USC shut it down. That was the thing that really disappointed me. Was I don't know if they looked across the line about the third quarter and said, all right, I've had enough of this Alabama defensive line and offensive line. I'm ready to go. But I thought the Jamari Ruffin kicking the player down on the field, there's some character issues. Now he's suspended for half a game against Utah State. I would have considered suspending him for the rest of the year. They need to change the culture at USC. This is not a one-game thing. Since Pete left, this has been going on with Lane and Sark, and now to start with Clay Helton. If you're Clay Helton, you've got to draw a line in the sand and say, guys, no more annex. I don't care if we lose every game. We're not playing like that. I'm taking notes on who played hard, who quit, and if you quit on me, you're not playing next week. He's got to do something drastic to change the culture of USC because you're right. College football is better when that brand is winning and they matter, and you want to get excited to go to the Coliseum. There's some big issues right now on that roster, and he's going to have to do something to shake it up because that was a combination of Alabama's really good and USC has a lot of work to do.
I'll leave you with this. If I told you a year ago Carson Wentz and Dak Prescott would start week 1 of the NFL season the following year, what would you have said?
No way. I would not have thought that had a chance of happening, especially how can you sit here in the 2015 season and say, North Dakota State, as much as we love them, their quarterback Carson Wentz is going to be a starter in the NFL week 1. It's impossible to predict that. Dak Prescott, if he would have gone to the right situation because of how powerful he is, it's just a matter of would he be able to grasp everything that it takes to be a quarterback, reading coverage, making the throws. Just like any young rookie steps into that spot, it's tough to do making that jump. But, boy, I think if he takes off, he could become another really, really special quarterback. If you watch him throw, you watch him move around, presence in the pocket, in the college game, reading coverages, and now he's got all those tools around him to work with. He's probably the one guy I'm most excited to watch this weekend of the rookie class, based on what he's capable of doing and what he has to work with in that game with Dallas.
Did you try out for an NFL team?
I was one of those guys. This is hard to explain because it was back in the 90s. I had 2 free agent opportunities, didn't get drafted, didn't have the passion the way I did for college, didn't want to be a kid that bounced around from arena football and the World League at that time. I just was ready to kind of move on. I didn't want to be a guy that thought it was kind of embarrassing for guys that just, this NFL wasn't in your future, kind of move on with life. And I just wanted to move on. I had no idea where I was headed. I got into local radio, and things kind of really took off within a year. But I just did not want to bounce around from Arena League to World League. I just felt like it's time to close that chapter and kind of move on.
And you did.
I sure did.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for getting up, and safe travels. Tell Chris we said hello, and hopefully we'll talk again. Thanks, Herbie.
Yeah, man. You got it, buddy. Anytime.
All right. Kirk Herbstreit.
The Dan Patrick Show, weekday mornings on Audience.